More than 1 in 4 young people in Africa, around 72 million, are unemployed without education or training, with Sub-Saharan Africa having the highest youth unemployment rate in the world at over 30%. Analysts say young people are excluded from development processes in many African countries. Now, this pushes them to participate in demonstrations as they try to change political systems. They warn that the Gen Z anti-finance bill protest in Kenya should serve as a warning to the political establishment throughout Africa and for African leaders to come together and address challenges that the youths face. Meanwhile, following demonstrations in Kenya in the past week, some posters have surfaced on social media about the possibility of protests in Tanzania, Malawi, and Ghana. Now, to discuss this further, I'm being joined by a political analyst, Makomborero Haruzive. Hello, Makomborero. Thank you so much for joining me at this time.
Hello, thank you for hosting us.
All right, so let's have your reaction to the possible youth protest in Africa. Now, do you think the recent Kenyan protest, could possibly herald the long-predicted youth rebellion in Africa? And, what are the key drivers of discontent among young African youths?
Yeah, this is not coming as a surprise, considering that by 2030, which is just 6 years away from today, young Africans are expected to make up 42% of world's youth, and they will also account for 75% of the population in Africa. To be specific, those under the age of 35 in Africa. With such a large population of young people, there is need for supportive policies and programs on inclusive youth development, which are critical now more than ever. And this is what the older generation is failing to understand. They are failing to understand that young people now need to be involved in critical decision making. Young people need to be involved in critical economic, participation activities. They need a share in the modes and means of production. Young people need, to be consulted and involved at the very high levels in as far as how their countries are run, because they are now the biggest political capital in Africa now, and in 6 years it will be 3/4 of the political capital, be it on the democratic and also demographic parameters. So what is really kickstarting this? It's natural. It's young people being excluded from the economy, yet they are the majority. How many young people own land in Africa? How many young people own mines in Africa? How many young people own big businesses in Africa? Of all the tenders that we see from governments, what percentage goes to young Africans? So the government's failure to accommodate young people and increase in vices like corruption, where in the middle of poverty, unemployment, and hopelessness, we see government looting, like in Zimbabwe, I'm sure, from the gold mafia, to more recently, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions being looted, and them only depending on capturing government institutions like
okay. Now, in light of what you have actually just said, I agree with you that a lot has been happening in Africa, and the youths are tired. If not, they're getting there. So what are the potential consequences, if I must ask, for economic development and stability if a youth spring were to occur in Africa?
The consequences are natural. Is the logical conclusion to what is politically, socially, and economically logical. It's for the majority to be heard. It's the majority to be in charge. That's what democracy is, after all. That's why the liberation struggle was fought for, from colonialism and oppression. It was to let the majority voice and will reign supreme. It's what our constitutions are always reflecting. So the conclusion will be a new generation is coming on, and it will be generational consensus all across Africa. It will be those governments, if they fail to open up space for young people, they'll be swept aside. And those that will try to resist, like what we are seeing in Kenya, where young people are being abducted and arrested and tortured, like what we have seen in Swaziland, where young people are being killed and the opposition assassinated, what we've been seeing in Zimbabwe, where young people and the opposition are arrested, jailed, tortured, and abducted. And these are trends that are happening across Africa. They are trying to stop the unstoppable because it's coming. It's just like they should remember maybe around 50 years ago when colonialists thought they were strong, they were unshakable, but the waves of change, the winds of change were inevitable. And this is the situation where we are in right now. So the logical conclusion will be this revolution will be over when young people have a meaningful stake in as far as decision making in critical governance issues is concerned, where young people have a critical stake in the economy, a critical stake in land, a critical stake in how they determine and set their future.
All right. Well, I was actually going to ask you a few questions on, the Occupy movements and the Arab Spring, because history has not soon forgotten all those. But hopefully we'll get to speak more on this at another time. But thank you so much, Makomborero, for joining me and speaking on this.